Hello and welcome to COM 2200 Mass Media History on a rainy, crummy afternoon. Well, we'll try to be interesting today and get you set for next week. We are winding down. What's happening is this week, we've done ethics, and today, public relations, advertising, and propaganda. Next week, we will do radio, then television. The week after, movies and the internet, then Thanksgiving, and a review, and a final echem, and we done. The end is in sight. Anyway.
The end is near.
Yay. What we do have stuff to do in the short run. Right now, we have, okay, that's the class notes. I wanted to say we have for tomorrow, one example of ethical media behavior and one example of unethical media behavior. One, and I will type this in, specific, because a couple of people have asked, well, gee, what about cyberbullying as a topic? Generally speaking, you're in the ballpark. But what we're really looking for on this is a specific example of cyberbullying. If a media person bullies somebody else, you have a real case study of whether or not that's right or wrong. Somebody, one of your classmates, asked just before class, how about good coverage of vaccines and bad coverage of vaccines? Awesome. You know, take an issue, one story of each, and you got it. You need to say why it's good or bad, and I have from last time. Here is several codes of ethics that you can quote. Two outside sources to explain, include, okay, cite a media code of ethics. Here they are. Can take any one of them, find another one. And then one more, since I've given you sources to quote, find one more. Find an outside source of your own to back up what you're saying about your issue. Now remember, you know, with the grading scale, do this, do it well, 95. Do more, give me 400, 500, 600 words, 3 or 4 sources, that's where the 100 comes in. So we give you room for extra effort. So I'm looking forward to it. I will take drafts and or questions for the next 24 hours, 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, I'll probably start grading these things. So that's what's up and coming. Feel free to contact me with any questions. Really looking forward to it because I really want to see what you're thinking is good and bad in the media. And again, back it up. Say why, one example of why something is good using a code of ethics. One example why it's not so good. We have a question. Oh, it's due tomorrow the 5th. Tomorrow, Friday, I'll fix that right now. Okay, okay, where is, go back. Edit. Let us scroll down. do November 5th. Yep, that's it. November 5th, 11:59. That's tomorrow. And you see, I didn't cut it off. That way, if somebody's late, we'll still get it. Also, if you notice on grading and things like that, if you will notice, I have curved your tests. I've gave everybody 4 extra points. Well, I've moved up the median 4 points. That's how Canvas does it. If your grade has gone down, sometimes that happens, let me know and I'll fix it manually. But you all are doing really well. I really appreciate it. And it's coming along. And what we do this week is, come on, here's a bigger window, is, okay, for today, propaganda and advertising, chapter 6 in Kovarik. There may be a question on this on the final exam. By the way, final exam is just the 20th century. It is not comprehensive. We finish up this chapter, we done. Okay, topic suggestions through Friday. That's tomorrow at 2, and then next week, radio broadcasting and TV. So, but in today's episode, we have another question. I will get that right now. Hold on. Another question. What day is the final exam? It will open the first day of finals. I don't remember that on the top of my head. It will be open 8 a.m. first day of finals, and it will be open to the end of the day on whatever day we're supposed to do this final exam. So you'll have a couple of days like everything else, and a comprehensive, good review. Plus we have all of these class notes things that I'm starting to do. That way, that really gives you the information. You don't have to sit and take the notes. I have the notes for you. So we're really trying to give you what you need to get this information, to use it, to understand it. I really want, I mean, this stuff matters to me. And because it is free speech and what happens in this society, it is something y'all need to think about. Okay, today, advertising, public relations, and propaganda. Okay, for big picture points at the top. Media has always been a business. This is about business. Advertising is how the business of the media makes money. So we're always, when you're talking about media studies, we're talking business studies. That's why things are good and bad most of the time, because of business considerations. Media can be used to promote business, but also derive income. Most of the income is derived from advertising. So you can promote business, but you also make money. This is the bread and butter in the media. Media practitioners, publishers, printers, politicians, or other sponsors may use media to promote their own causes. You have, and we'll look at in history, you had abolitionist newspapers, you had women's newspapers, you have, one issue newspapers, magazines. Obviously, they're biased toward their point of view. That's not a bad thing. You know what you're getting. Rise of advertising. This is the big thing today. Why we're doing this now is, sure, the money thing has always been there, but really the consideration of it, the idea that PR and advertising are professions, and the examination of how the professions work is really a 20th century phenomenon. It's always been there, but we really started to look at it at the beginning of the 20th century. So this is why we do this along with the ethics part. Folks started to realize, researchers, government people, business people, realize in the late 1800s, OMG, this media thing is a big, hairy deal that can change society, that can cause wars. So on the one hand, people like Adolph Ochs of Chattanooga started thinking, maybe this media thing is something we can kind of control a little bit. And if you remember, Ochs didn't do it because he was civic minded, even though he was. The idea was, with yellow journalism, with Hearst and Pulitzer, let's do something different to stand out. And what that different thing is ethical media. And again, ethical media was a concept, just like free speech. You have this concept that you're working on. What it means and how do we practice it has been evolving. It always has been, and it always will. Anyway, so ethics on the one hand. On the other hand, people start thinking, maybe we have this big, powerful media. Maybe we can use it to make money or to change the world. Basic terms. Come on. Advertising. Advertising is the direct promotion of a person, business, or organization. You know if there's a sale at Walmart. You know if they're selling cars at Mountain Toyota. You know it's an ad. So the sponsors of the advertising pay for time and space in the media. A commercial, a print ad. We'll talk about other things that media people do. So you pay money for access to the media. Now, and it goes back Gutenberg. People would pay him to print flyers for sales and plays and government stuff. When they do that, the advertiser controls the message. You can say the moon is made of green cheese in an ad. You are buying total control. It is your ideas if you are buying an ad. You're paying for, you can say whatever you want in a commercial or in an ad or a billboard, any of that. You're buying not just time and space, but control. Advertising is still the major source of income for the media. And when you see an ad, you know it's an ad. Some other things, maybe not. But an ad, you know, it's a billboard, it's an ad, it's a commercial. What kind of forms does advertising have? We already talked about commercials. What we call in print display ads. I mentioned billboards. What other things are advertising? What other things do we have that are advertising? Okay, somebody else. What other things? Shirts, yes. Clothes. Anytime you wear a hat or a t-shirt, you are advertising for the sponsor. Now, this is why you never see logos on my clothes, because if I'm going to be your billboard, you're going to pay me for it. So, you know, it's just a little quirky thing. But if I have Instagram posts, decorated trucks, logo, logos, all of that stuff. Ooh, product placement. That's really good. Product placement in a movie is when, and Mike Myers as Austin Powers used to do that. I'm drinking Coke. James Bond is driving an Aston Martin. Yes, logos, stuff in movies, they pay for it. Logos on cups, Instagram. Yeah, people pay all sorts of stuff. That's a good one. Decorated trucks. Yeah. Here's swag, merch. You get a, you get toys and bubbles. Go Atlanta, go Braves, get little bobbleheads. You get, hold on. This came from the grocery store. It's backwards on this. It's Aldi. Again, it's an ad that comes with your shopping bag. You see that stuff everywhere. So yeah, every time you turn around, you're advertising, and the advertiser pays for that. You pay for the t-shirt, you get that, but you're walking around being an ad. And you know it's an ad. So you got it. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Public relations is a bit more subtle. PR does not pay for time and space. They have to work with the media to get their message across. Media to get message across. The media people control how it turns out. You may work with the TV station. You may work with the newspaper or magazine, but ultimately they control what comes. The media people controls what goes on. And yeah, you have to work with the media. Okay, here's some forms of PR you might think of. Speaking of the Braves, sponsorships. You can sponsor an event. My last employer won the GoDaddy Bowl. You know, that's PR. Every time you think of the event, you think of the sponsor. Here's another thing. Press conferences. When you want to announce something, if you want to have a new store, you call the media and you bring them in, you do their announcement and they write it up for you. So press conference is a form of PR. Oh, here's what we call media subsidies, which is usually video clips, pictures, etc. When there is a new vaccine, you see the happy nurse shooting the vaccine into a kid's arms. That doesn't come from ABC, NBC, or CNN. That comes from Pfizer or Moderna. They have that video clip and they give it to media outlets. So yeah. So all of that stuff. Press, the classic thing is press releases. You write up a news story, put it in the, give it to the media outlet, boom, it's there. Other stuff. We had some ideas. Other stuff that's really kind of PR. Let's see. Things that you might see in the media. Again, events. When I used to cover Southern Connecticut, I got invited to go to the Highlight thing all the time. And the food was, sports was good because the food was good. This is why I covered Republicans. Republicans had more money, so the food was better. Yeah, food and drinks, being with your friends. So those sorts of things and how that works. I'll just out randomly, let's see, NBCnews.com. Let's see what we get. Okay, PR. Headline, January 4th, deadline to get vaccinated. That didn't come from NBC. That came from the White House. The Biden people and the press corps wrote up a press release, made some phone calls, and there it is on the front page. This is public relations. Operative behind the Steele dossier came from the Justice Department. In Australia, they're trying to find a lost child, and the police are sending that out for information. Again, NBC is not doing any of these stories. They all come from PR sources. There you go. They're 3 top stories. Now, okay, weather, they probably did themselves. Tiger King, see, Joe Exotic, whatever his sponsor, of course, sent a press release, a story to NBC. So many of these stories come from PR sources. So again, it's all around us. Propaganda is a more extreme version of PR. It means literally to propagate ideas and influence behavior. Term coined by the journalist Benito Mussolini, who became dictator of Italy in the 1920s through World War II, but he was a writer first. And he used the term propaganda to say what he's trying to do. May be used by businesses for political purposes or individuals. Public relations works with the media. Propaganda may work for the media, yes, aka Il Duce, which means the leader. Would the campaign qualify? Certainly it's PR. It could be it could be considered propaganda if the whole point is they're trying to change people's behavior, especially if there's something unhealthy. We'll talk a little about this, but this is, PR and propaganda overlap. Propaganda is a little bit more extreme. Propaganda works with the media, but it could also have its own outlet. For example, in China, authoritarian countries, you have the government controlling what the media says. They had just recently passed a law in China that you cannot say bad things about Xi Jinping, the president. So you're only going to read nice things about President Xi in the media. That's propaganda. So those are the kind of forms we'll be looking at. And again, so much of it is, again, the 1920s, when we're starting to think that the media is a big thing. Folks are sitting around thinking, let's do something with that big, powerful item. Okay, advertising. Entire history of advertising, some short ones. beginning, it goes really back from the beginning. Among the first things that the civilized people did was say, hey, there's a sale. Here's how much beer we have. Here's how much grain we have. These little announcements, that's ads. So it really, and again, advertising comes before news. The whole idea of producing news maybe comes a little later, but it's all about money first. Okay, no one knows exactly, but ancient markets, people shouted, they wrote on tablets and passed them around. Here's the first known ad in Egypt, 3000 BC. It's an ad for an enslaved person. They're selling a person. Shem having run away, they're gonna get, he is a Hittite, which is people from like modern Syria. First known ad, enslaved people, but they're trying to sell. Commercial, ancient Rome, they talk about Pompeii. When Pompeii was a city that was buried by a volcano. When they dug it all up, there's ads on the walls for restaurants, bathhouses, all sorts of stuff. Okay, printing, here's the Chinese putting a logo on of the king, a seal of the king on their documents. Here we go. Gutenberg, like everything else, blows it away, because all of a sudden you could bring an announcement to Gutenberg saying, we're gonna sell grain, cakes, wheat, dogs. You put it on, you give it to Gutenberg, he makes the announcement, you print it up, pass them out. It's advertising. Again, the ads come first, and then the printer, Gutenberg or whomever, they get the money. Again, the money comes from advertising. Mass media, magazines, again, they all made money from advertising. The first real advertising agency in the UK, 1786, I'm not going to ask for a date like that on a test, says, come to me and I will design your ad and bring it to the printer. Here's in the US of A, by starting a newspaper that's all ads. You see that a lot today. You see flyers and whatnot. So yeah, radio and TV. Here's Mickey advertising for something. So we'll get to radio and TV more next time. Short thing on the advertising agency. Advertising agency is the person or organization that you come to get your ad in the media. They're the middle person. Brands hired agencies to produce commercials, to decide what we call the media mix. Is it better to do direct mail? Is it better to use Instagram? Is it better to use print media? Again, depends on who you're trying to reach and the audience. Here we go, Taylor again. Here's all, here's the army, all these famous ads. So just a quick one there. History of PR. PR goes back as far as advertising. Remember our first talk on what is the media. And we ask, what is this? This author says, that's PR for the tribe. Hey, look at us. You know, we went out and we rode horses. We killed mammoths and bears. Look at us. You could call that news reporting. You could call it PR. You can argue it any number of ways, but that need to say, we are here, look at us, promoting the tribe. There it is. PR can arguably go back to the beginning of time. The Egyptians, look at all the statues. Hey, look at us. Aren't we cool, powerful? We can make these big, scary statues. We're big and powerful. Look at us. The Bible. This argues that Moses come down with the 10 commandments, and you have that thing that you can pass around. It's certainly media. And because the 10 commandments in the Bible were written down, not only does that transmit your culture, it tells people who you are. Hey, look at, we are the Jews. We are the chosen people. And these are our laws. Hey, look at us. So yeah, and same thing for the Greeks, Confucius. Remember we talked about Caesar and Acta Diurna. You know, the first, what they call a newspaper, but it's really a PR organ. Hey, look, Caesar today defeated the Belgae, which is the Belgians' big woo, but he wrote about it and people got to know Caesar. One could say that certainly the Apostle Paul, before him, the Christians wanted to stay and reform the Jewish religion, Judea. It was Paul who said, I got something good here. And he went to the Ephesians in Turkey, the Corinthians in Greece, the Romans in Italy. He's the one who got the word out. It has been said that one of the great strengths of Christianity is that Jesus had 12 good Jewish PR men, you know, and he had a good product, but you had that outreach. 3rd century, we talked about the scrolls of Alexandria, Genghis Khan. Again, look at us. He had people writing down on scrolls his exploits, and people from China to, you know, Poland and Hungary heard of Genghis Khan. Gutenberg again. The Protestant Reformation, those 95 theses that Luther put up on the wall, distributed everywhere. And all of a sudden, we don't have to listen to that Pope guy anymore. So again, that's PR for the Reformation. For Luther, Luther never wanted to start his own church. He wanted to fix the Catholic Church, but unintended consequences. People have, you know, sometimes your PR has a life of its own. The Boston Tea Party. Remember we talked about events being PR to draw attention? Yeah, that protest, throwing the tea in the water, saying we don't like those taxes, using PR to try to change things. Common sense.
Give me liberty or give me death.
That was Patrick Henry, but he certainly read Paine. Paine's idea that was that America should be a separate country. PR for, again, unintended consequences. People read that and was like, whoa, mind blown. So yeah, PR for this country. Here's Andrew Jackson. Abolitionism, emancipation, Frederick Douglass. These are, you start reading. Remember we said that sometimes PR people or propagandists use their own media outlets. Garrison used the Liberator. It's his own newspaper to say his point of view. And remember, no such thing as unbiased stuff these days. Here is Tesla and Edison, again, getting their stuff. Oh, before we break off to other stuff, my homie, Barnum. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. He's from Bethel, a few miles away. You know, if you have, I used to have them. If you have animal crackers, they were originally called Barnum's Animals. They were the animals in his circus. That is swag for, it's merch actually for his promotions, for the circus. So he's always doing promotions. He's big on PR. Yes. Yes. And they were originally PR for the circus. Okay, who do we have here? Vanderbilt, and who's the grandfather of CNN's Anderson Cooper. Anderson Cooper's mother was Gloria Vanderbilt. So it's funny that his grandson became a media person. Ivy Lee and PR we'll get to right now. There's the profession at the time, again, in the late 1800s, late 1900s, early 20th century. It's more than just a concept. You really start to try to structure and socialize PR. Again, from the beginning, we talked, you know, Socrates spoke about an engaged public to try to bring people in. Publicity Bureau, the first PR company around 1900. Oh, it goes back to this. Hello. I hate when this happens. So in the late 1800s and early 1900s, knowing that the media was powerful, some operators like Ivy Lee, who I will get to shortly, decided, let's make a business about this. You come to me if you want to get your message out in the media. And then that grew. And then the internet certainly has blown the doors off. So some basic background, a little bit more detail. First real agency guy.
By advertising on YouTube, I catch the eye of my ideal customers at the right time.
Okay.
I can
See, advertising.
Ivy
Can't
Lee and the
escape it.
first press releases. Following on from the publicists and press agents of the mid-19th century, the beginning of the 20th century saw the development of a second public information model of public relations. It's been argued that this was a reaction to the increasing impact that the rising number of investigative journalists were having.
Remember we talked about the muckrakers last time? Well, the people who were getting raked started to say, maybe we need to answer that. And they had the money to hire Mr. Lee.
Having on both government and corporate reputations. The leaders of government-run organizations and private corporations began to realize that they needed their very own in-house journalists to write about the good
In-house journalists to get your message out.
things that the organization did and explain what had happened when things went wrong. One of the first, and ultimately one of the most notorious of these in-house journalists, was a former financial newspaper reporter turned public relations officer, Ivy Lee. In 1906, he published his first book, The Declaration of Principles, in which he set out very clearly the philosophy that he was trying to adopt. In his declaration, Lee promised the transparent supply of prompt and accurate information about clients to the press and public. The Pennsylvania Railroad incident of 1906 resulted in what's regarded
big train crash. People died. The railroad company, hired Ivy Lee to say, not our fault.
it as the first press release when Lee convinced Pennsylvania Railroad to present a statement to journalists at the scene of the accident. The New York Times.
So they hired Ivy Lee, former journalist. He writes the story from the railroad company's point of view, saying, hey, we didn't do it. Not our fault. The New York Times prints it verbatim. And as a former newspaper person, let me tell you, we love that. Someone does our job for us. You get the press release, put it in the paper. You don't have to go out to the site. If you know what you're doing, you can get your message in the media. This is why people who want to do marketing, public relations, and promotions should have some media background. That way, you know how to get your information into media outlets.
Printed the release word for word.
Yep.
Lee not only convinced the railroad to distribute a press release to journalists before they heard rumors about what had happened, he also
getting out in front of the story. People still don't get that. If there's an accident or arrest, you need to get your side out before the rumor mill starts. Too often, leaders, executives, politicians try to make the story go away. Try to ignore it or shut down those leakers. If something leaks from Washington, what they need to do is get out and say, okay, this is what happened. Tell your side, because if you don't, the rumor mill's just going to overrun you anyway. And folks still don't get that.
invited reporters and photographers to the scene of the accident, going so far as to provide a special train to get them there. As Lee said about his public relations work, all our work is done in the open.
Yep.
We aim to supply news. This is not an advertising agency.
Yep, you getting that word out, you work with the media, the advertising agency gets you that space and you do the work and you put your message on there. PR, you're working with the media.
Agency.
Okay. No idea who that person is. And then we take the next step a few years later with Edward Bernays.
The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world.
And you notice in this picture, all old white guys. Behind the scenes, well, this is obviously a picture, I think I recognize Sandra Vanoker. So this is late 50s, early 1960s, but they're using public relations to get their message out. And as Bernays said, these guys behind the scenes are largely running the show. These days in Congress, we have lobbyists. There are PR people trying to tell the Congress people, You should vote for or against gun control or vaccines. All of these arguments about how you feel about vaccines, that's a PR war. The Centers for Disease Control has their message. People who are anti-vaccine have their message, and it's all a war of PR.
World. This passage was written by Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud and a pioneering mind behind advertising, modern propaganda, in the field of public.
Yes, that is famous ad. Greta Garbo. That's who that is. That's the actress Greta Garbo. And, you know, you're making cigarettes look glamorous.
Relations. Bernays' influence was enormous. Relying heavily on the insights of his uncle, he developed highly successful manipulation techniques, which are still used today, not only by companies to sell consumer products, but also by the powers that be to, in the words of Bernays, control and regiment the masses. In this video, we'll explore some of Bernays' most intriguing ideas, paying particular attention to his insights on how group psychology can be used to control and manipulate the masses.
Interesting, folks.
In his classic work, Group Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego, Sigmund Freud described group psychology as being concerned with the individual man as a member of a race, of a nation, of a caste, of a profession, of an institution, or as a component part of a crowd of people who have been organized into a group at some particular time for some definite purpose. In other words, group psychology attempts to understand how an individual's behavior, thoughts, and emotions change when becoming a part of a group.
Yeah, big time. You can be cool like Greta Garbo and smoke Luckies. You can be a patriot and be a conservative. You can be a patriot and be a liberal, but it's us versus them. It's trying to set you apart by being part of a given group. One of my favorite authors is Yuval Noah Harari from Israel, who says, you know, worst thing that ever happened to humankind was civilization, because we're hardwired to be tribal, to be in small groups competing and fighting out on the savannah or in forests or wherever. And we're just not made up to work in large, diverse societies. Bernays knew that. So he's trying to pull together the tribalism. Now, these days, you see that all over the internet. They're doing classic Bernays PR. Vote for us, not them. We're good, they're bad. And that's why it works, because psychology and our basic evolution.
The tendency of human beings to form groups was selected for in our evolutionary past due to the survival benefit.
Yeah, there you go. Small tribes.
Formed the environment in a manner which renders the survival value of tribal organization obsolete.
Right.
But with that said, the ancient and instinctual pull of tribal organization still looms large in the lives of most, with many people today identifying and hence stereotyping both themselves and others based on things such as race, class, gender, nationality, religion, or the political party or ideology.
Yep. Basic psychology and PR. Be like us, not like them.
Your implanted trigger words.
Mm-hmm. All right. So again, Lee and Bernays really examined how this stuff worked to make it public relations into a profession and to understand how it works psychologically. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. If you're working for a good cause, maybe not. But who decides what a good cause is? That's the hard part. Take it a step further. we have propaganda.
What is truth?
Yeah.
Or better
Ooh.
yet, what is real?
Well, yeah. What is real and what's with the internet? These are good questions.
Journalist Walter Lippmann wrote of the pseudo-environment, the idea that existence is so complex that every individual manufactures and experiences their own reality and vision of the world. Lippmann believed the reality.
Lippmann again, magic bullets theory, big media says that, you know, you're not in Afghanistan, you're not in California or in DC. So the media presents its own little world the way they want you to see it.
Realities of the general public are informed by the media it consumes itself, subject to censorship and manipulation. The control of information and the public's willingness to accept the truth it presented allows those with power and influence to project their realities onto others. This is propaganda. Hello and
Okay, early on,
welcome to Animation Propaganda.
that was a caricature, go back to it, of a German soldier in that was a German soldier in World War I. They made him look big and scary and evil.
Tunes. Trust me, there'll be plenty of that coming up. This is going to be a general overview, and while not exhaustive, it should give you a pretty good understanding of what propaganda is and how it's frequently used. While the formal spreading of disinformation dates back as far as history has been recorded, our story begins in the 13th century with the invention of the printing press. The mass production of print media made emerging ideas more accessible and provided propagandists with their first major tool. Information could now be shared or manipulated in a way that led the reader into a certain way of thinking by omitting details or presenting lies as facts. Narratives were generally pushed through the distribution of
Thomas Paine
leaflets.
again.
An early American example was Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Published in 1776, Common Sense made a case for American independence by painting the British monarchy as tyrannical. Targeting commoners, Paine outlined a reality where all were equal and free. He released Common Sense to coincide with a proclamation by the king, a tactic that proved effective, and Paine's call to action invigorated the population just months before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Propaganda was integral to the founding of America. Borrowing a tactic from other British colonies, those with power spread atrocity stories. These were fabrications featuring indigenous people committing unspeakable.
Yep, look at how we portrayed the Native Americans in the movies. Propaganda. Oh, look at those terrible Native Americans.
Acts in order to convince colonizers that their cause was just. Demonizing a racial or cultural scapegoat and appealing to prejudice are very effective techniques, ones we'll be seeing time and time again.
Again, using Bernays. We're good, they're bad. Well, you know, you can see the whole thing on your own if you want, but you get the point. You can see, again, early 20th century.
After the United States enters the war in April 1917, President Woodrow Wilson knows that he needs to mobilize not just the American army, but the American people. And he knows that's a difficult task. So what Wilson does is he launches a massive campaign of propaganda that taps into every media that's available in America at the time.
Yeah, America was neutral for most of World War I.
I want you for U.S. Army.
This includes newspapers, movies, posters,
See, we get everybody in the act.
toys and games for children, all aspects of popular culture. In some ways, this
Charlie Chaplin, you get celebrities to promote
new
your war.
propaganda machine is not so different from this new industry called advertising. But now all of those techniques are
See, get everybody, us and them, blacks, Jews, we're all on this one side against those terrible
being
Germans.
turned to advertising the American war effort. The primary person behind this effort is George Creel, who presents Wilson with the opportunity to turn this propaganda machine into a government agency, the Committee on Public Information, or
See, they're getting their message out. doing PR, like Bernays said, for patriotism, for what they consider the public good.
CPI.
The major mission of the CPI is to get all of Americans on board with the war effort. Creel gets 75,000 men to volunteer to be what were called the 4-Minute Men. They went all over the United States. They were speaking in movie theaters. They were speaking in libraries. They were telling people to support our efforts in the war. Buy Liberty bonds, follow our food policies, eat less, conserve more, and grow your own food. And then supply the labor that's needed, not just in the war industries, but also on farms.
The beauty of the 4-Minute Men is that they are doing the government's work, but they are in fact actually volunteers, neighbors, people you might already know who are
And we later find out in communications research that really is effective. You might not believe what you read in the paper, but you're going to believe your family members, the leaders of your church, of your school. So they're really starting, knowing they have this big media thing, this powerful tool. We're going to harness it to make people do what we want them to do. Now, this is patriotic. World War I, you can argue, is about European governments, but we're going to get everybody on our side. Little later.
Finally, to our NewsHour shares of the day, something that caught our eye that might be of interest to you too. 82 years ago today, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt delivered the first of 30 radio speeches, which came to be known as fireside chats. The addresses comforted American audiences and were designed to inspire confidence in the nation's leaders during the Great Depression. Here's a bit from the first fireside chat families gathered around their radios to hear in 1933.
You people must have faith. You must not be stampeded by rumors or guesses. Let us unite in banishing fear. We have provided the machinery to restore our financial system, and it is up to you to support and make it work. It is your problem, my friends. Your problem no less than it is mine. Together, we cannot fail.
Okay, what was going on in 1933 was that it's the depth of the Depression, everybody's unemployed, and folks wanted to get their money out of the banks. We're afraid that everything's going to collapse. Let's withdraw everything, all my savings, put it in cash, put it in a mattress, put it in a cookie jar. The problem with that, if the banks lose all of their money, they can't make loans. They can't make loans to build houses, to start a business. The banking industry would collapse. There would be no economic growth. So at this time, oops, somebody has a comment. Yes, this is something we're talking about today. To what extent should the government be involved in our economic system? Hoover didn't think that should be the government's job. Franklin Roosevelt thought it should be, and he used the media. This is just, and we'll talk about radio next time. It's beginning of the beginning of the radio era. You have reading newspapers, but then you have this new thing, the radio in your house, and you turn on the radio and there's the president. You have his picture up on the wall. It's like he's talking to you. And unlike today, you have only 2 networks. So every radio in the country is listening to this guy. And you have the president telling you, do not take your money out of the bank. Trust the government. Trust the government and we will take care of you. Now, things are different today, but his we're all in this together. We cannot fail. It worked. The banks did hold up. We did crawl out of the depression. What really made us come out of the depression was 8 years later when World War II started and everybody had to get a job to be in the war effort. But anyway, helped keep the country afloat using the media, using propaganda. Don't go to the bank. And as Quentin said, Hoover had just the opposite point of view. So he's really using the media to get you to do what he wants you to do. On the other hand, hello.
Technology may have changed, but Roosevelt's chat
There
idea
goes.
survives, even in today's social media.
Okay, back to this. On the other side, Mussolini has a friend. And his friend was named Adolf Hitler. Remember we talked about Bernays turning stuff into us and them? Hitler hires Joseph Goebbels, another former journalist, to head his, and they called it the propaganda ministry. He gets up there and the Nazis controlled all the media, all the radio stations, all the newspapers, the movies. And this is all you hear. That, remember, like Bernays says, it's us and them. You have a problem, it's those guys. Things are turning bad, it's those guys. And you hear that again and again. And we talked about PR. You have big events like they had the Olympics. And you make a big show of it. And he hired the movie director Leni Riefenstahl to make these movies, to make them look just really awesome. Look at all those people. There they are. We're big, we're powerful, take us seriously. They went so far as going to Warsaw, where the Nazis rounded up all the Jews and made them live within a couple of blocks. It's called the Warsaw Ghetto. They got one of city council person who was Jewish to say, oh, don't worry, the Nazis aren't all that bad. I mean, and see, we even let the Red Cross into Czechoslovakia. We're not bad, really, really, really. And that's all you heard if you were in Germany. So they really used propaganda to control an entire nation, arguably the most civilized nation in the world, to just go nuts and kill millions and millions of people, because they knew, like Freud and Bernays said, they can divide us into us and them. And we see that every day right now. That's why I've tried, you see that on the internet, you hear that repeated in news. Welcome to the modern world. Okay, next time we'll talk about broadcasting. We have an essay due Friday. Again, be specific. Don't just, like I say, get a broad topic. Find its specific incident. I think it was Claire asked about vaccines. A good vaccine, an ethical vaccine story, and an unethical vaccine story. That's a really good one. So just some ideas. Any questions? Yes, we have somebody. Okay, you're welcome. We're here See, I'm really trying to kind of reconfigure things to really be able to reach you. Thanks for noticing. Anyway, I appreciate your presence. I'll post this whenever this gets done. I'll post the notes as filled in, and we'll see you Tuesday. Later.